Hi everyone, yasas, kefalotiri to another episode of Dimitra's Dishes. Today I'm going to be sharing with you one of the most iconic Greek dishes of all time, moussaka. I've done this recipe on the channel 1 or 2 times before, but I am updating and freshening up my older recipes that are on the blog with new pictures and new footage. I'm also writing a cookbook that's going to feature all of my most popular main courses, veggies, and a few other dishes. So I have to redo some of the recipes just to get them perfect for that book. And so I thought, let me share these tips and tricks with you that I probably or might have not shared before in the other videos. Moussaka, if you've never had it, it's layers of potatoes and eggplant, a rich meat sauce, and then a creamy, delicious bechamel, lots of cheese. It's so comforting and delicious. Let's get started. Okay, so we're going to begin by making the meat sauce. I've made this hundreds of times on the channel, so here we go. Finely chop an onion and add it to a saucepan with some olive oil and let this cook until it's nice and soft and golden over medium heat. That's going to take about 10 minutes. Next, I'm adding 6 garlic cloves that are grated. Just warm them through until they're fragrant, just for a few seconds. Over here, I have 2 pounds of ground beef. It's going to go in with a little bit of salt and pepper, and I'm going to cook it for a few minutes until the pinkness goes away. Now I'll drop in 2 bay leaves, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. It adds so much flavor, it makes it fragrant, aromatic. You could barely tell that it's in there. And then 1 15-ounce can of either crushed tomatoes or tomato sauce with as few ingredients as possible. I'm using tomato sauce. All that's in here is tomatoes, salt, and a little pinch of sugar. So I know that there's nothing else going in here. I'm adding in all of the flavorings. And then I'll rinse the can out with about a cup of water and mix everything all together. Bring it to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, reduce the heat to a medium and let this cook with the lid on for about 25 minutes or until the sauce is nice and thick and the meat is totally cooked. You can taste it at this point and adjust the seasoning, add some more salt or pepper. And we're just going to finish this off with some finely chopped fresh parsley and a teaspoon of dried oregano. Give it a mix and the meat sauce is ready. Now let's move on to the eggplant. So one thing to keep in mind when you're buying eggplant, you want to buy an eggplant that's shiny and dark. You want to stay away from anything that has like brown spots on it. And then also very important, these go bad pretty quickly. So go bad means they're going to start to brown and become just really dark and seedy and bitter. So once you buy them, you're going to have to use them either that day or the next day. Keep that in mind. I bought mine a few days ago thinking I was going to do this video sooner than I actually got to it. And these eggplants aren't the best ones that I could find, but it's okay. It'll work because they're fresh enough. What I like to do is cut off the tip of the eggplant with the stem attached to it. And then I also like to get rid of as much of the peel as possible. It's tough and it's also a little bit bitter. I keep some of it on for show. So I just take a peeler and I just slice down around it here and there just to get rid of some of the skin. It's still going to hold together. And then I'll just cut it into about 1/2 inch thick slices. I like for the eggplant to be a little bit thicker and meatier. If you like your slices a little bit thinner, you could go down to about 1/4 inch in thickness. Layer the eggplants all in a pan or in a colander and then sprinkle some salt over them. You can put them on top of each other and just sprinkle salt over each layer and just set them aside. What's going to happen is the salt is going to draw out their bitter juices and they'll be more tender when you cook them. So before you go on to cook them, we're just going to pat them dry really well with a paper towel, and it's going to get rid of most of the salt and that bitter liquid. So it's a step that I like to use most of the time when I'm cooking with eggplant. I have skipped it every now and then if I've had really fresh eggplants, but I'm using it today because I saw lots of seeds in them. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the potatoes. I put way more potatoes than most people put in their moussaka. We love potatoes in our moussaka. If I can put another layer of potatoes in there, I would, but then it wouldn't fit in the pan. So make sure you have some peeled, either russet or gold potatoes, and then we're going to slice these also into about 1/2 inch thick pieces. This is very rustic. You don't have to be precise. As you can see, mine are thinner on one side and thicker on the other. Totally fine. These are going to go on a baking tray, and then I'm going to drizzle some olive oil over them, season with salt, pepper, and a little bit of oregano, and we're going to do this on both sides. They're going to bake in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit until they're golden and fork tender and fully cooked. That takes about 25-30 minutes. It can take a little bit longer depending on your oven. Just keep an eye on them. Take them out. Try not to mess with them when you take them out. They're going to kind of stick to the pan. But as they sit and cool, then once you run a spatula under them, they'll release so easily. Now you're going to cook the eggplants, and I'll talk about other options later on towards the end of the video, but I'm frying them because they taste best that way. In my cast iron skillet, I'll add plenty of oil. When you're frying eggplant, you need lots of oil. It's just how it goes. So plenty of olive oil, or you can use your favorite vegetable oil for frying. Get it nice and hot, and then I'll put as many eggplant slices in there that fit. Of course, I patted them dry really well before that. And then I have this screen that's gonna help keep the stove a little bit cleaner than if I didn't put this on here. These are going to cook on both sides about 2 to 3 minutes on each side, or until they're nice and golden and really soft. So once they're cooked, I'm gonna drain as much of the oil out back into the pan from each slice, and they're gonna go onto the same pan. I just made some room on the other side and lined it with some paper towels just so that way it can absorb as much of the oil as possible from the eggplant. And they're just going to go on here while I continue to fry these. I have a 9 by 13 inch baking pan ready to go, and we're just going to layer everything all together. So I begin with a nice hearty layer of potatoes. I like to sprinkle them with a little bit of either Parmesan cheese, or I have over here kefalotiri, which is a Greek Gruyere type cheese. You can use a regular Gruyere cheese. It just makes it taste so much richer and cozier. Then on top of the potatoes and the cheese, we'll do a layer of eggplant slices, a little bit more cheese on top, and then all of that rich meat sauce is going to be spread evenly over the eggplants. And then another layer of eggplant, and I also like to add lots of potatoes on this last layer, as many as possible. If it was up to my kids, we'd skip the eggplant and just make it all potato moussaka, and you can totally do that. You can also substitute zucchini slices, which are much milder than eggplant, for the eggplant. So it's up to you. Now we'll move on to making the bechamel sauce, because that's the final layer that's going on top. So in my saucepan over here, I'll add 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour and 3/4 of a cup of light olive oil. You can use butter too if you prefer, if you want it to have even more flavor. You just need 3/4 of a cup to get that roux going. We're just gonna cook this for a few minutes until the flour taste kind of goes away and it's nice and toasted. Then I'll add 5 to 6 cups of cold whole milk. And we're going to season with salt, a little bit of black pepper, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. Whisk that all together. We're going to cook the milk and flour mixture until it's steaming hot, it begins to boil, and it starts to thicken. This is the proper consistency. So if you take a wooden spoon and you dip it in there like I'm doing right now, and you run your finger down the middle, the sauce should stay separated like that. That's how you know the consistency is right. Turn the heat off and carefully pour in some of that cream over the eggs so we can temper them. Whisk them really well with that cream so that way they're tempered and they don't become scrambled eggs when we add them back into the pot. The heat is still turned off underneath the pot. The tempered eggs are now going to go in, whisk it all together, and then we're going to finish this off with a nice handful of cheese. You can use Parmesan or Graviera or Kefalograviera, whatever your favorite cheese is. Mix it all up, and now we're going to just pour it over the eggplant mixture, smooth it all out. And then of course, we're gonna hit it with a little more Parmesan cheese on top. This is gonna go into the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit on the center rack, and it's going to bake uncovered for 45 minutes. You'll see that it's bubbly and beautifully golden on top. The hardest part now is to wait for this to cool down so that we can slice it and the slices don't fall apart. And that's it. The moussaka is ready, and I'm telling you, the hardest part is waiting for it to cool down. You cannot cut into it while it's piping hot because the whole thing will be just a mess. It'll just be a soupy, mushy mess because the slices will not hold their shape. You have to wait about 2 hours before you slice into this so that way you can get beautiful slices, and it'll still be warm enough to eat. It'll be so delicious, and you could reheat it once it sets. It'll hold its shape, but that sauce does need to sit a little bit. So you just have to wait a little bit, and there's going to be lots of things to clean up in the meantime, so you'll have some time. All you need to serve this with is a Greek salad, and you can put it on the table. The family will love it. It's a rich and filling meal. And let me share some tips with you so that way you can have them on hand if you need them. Moussaka does take some work to make. So as you saw, there are a lot of steps. It's not something that you're just going to put pull together at the last minute. I mean, you can, but I just recommend that you don't because it's better to be prepared for this. You can make the meat sauce days ahead of time. I have done videos where I make this meat sauce and I freeze it and I use it in so many other recipes. You can make big batches of this and then just keep it frozen in the refrigerator in individual portion sizes for each recipe. And then you just pull it out, thaw it out, and you make this moussaka or pasticcio. It's the same meat sauce. So that's one step. You can also make the sauce a day or two ahead of time. It'll keep fresh in the refrigerator. It'll be perfect. The only thing is you have to keep your kids away from it because it tastes so good. My kids love to make wraps with it. We use it for macaronia and quinoa. So the meat sauce is really good. Make extra. And speaking of making extra, if you're going through all of the trouble to make this recipe, make another batch because it freezes well. The whole moussaka can be assembled and layered with the cream sauce on top with the bechamel. Once it comes to room temperature before you bake it, you can freeze this. So pop it in the freezer, and I would suggest that you don't freeze this in a ceramic pan or a glass pan. Ideally, you want to put it in a foil pan or in a metal pan because going in and out of the freezer, the pans can crack, and that has happened to me more than once. I don't want it happening to you. So you can make another batch, and like I said, before you bake it, set it in the freezer. Once it's fully set and frozen, you could wrap it in foil or parchment paper or plastic wrap, and it'll keep fresh in there for like 2-3 months. And then thaw it out overnight in the refrigerator, and you would just bake it like we would if we made it fresh. It'll taste so delicious. You won't even tell that it's been frozen before. So make an extra batch. Now, when it comes to preparing the eggplants, you can go the healthier way and bake the eggplant slices or even air fry them. You would just preheat the oven to 425 degrees Fahrenheit, brush the eggplant slices with some olive oil and season them with salt and pepper, and you just bake them until they're golden and soft. They don't come out as good as when they're fried. It's just how it is. So give it a try, but you can make the healthier version, again, like air frying or oven baking. Some people are not fans of eggplant, and we have some of them in our home. And as a matter of fact, when I was little, I used to hate eggplant and moussaka. So my aunt in Greece would always make this for me with zucchini slices, and I loved it. So you can do zucchini slices instead of the eggplant, or make it all potato slices. Who doesn't love layers of potato, cheese, meat, cream? It's delicious. So those are the tips that I have for you. If you have any questions, please make sure to leave them down below. I'll get to them as soon as I can. If you want to print out this recipe, you can head on over to the website to print it out. If you try it, let me know what you think. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes, us.